Do you want to learn how to make a mini album? I'm going to show you how. And here are the tools that you'll need to make a mini album. You'll need a pair of scissors, you'll need something to score with, you'll need a scoreboard. I use this to score with, this came with it, you could use a stylus, just whatever you want. You'll need a double-sided adhesive, so I use the Score Tape brand. I use two different sizes, the 1/4 inch and the 3/8 of an inch. So have those two sizes of whatever kind of double-sided adhesive you want to use. I also use a wet glue, so the one I'll use today is the Art Glitter Glue. You'll need a bone folder and you'll need some cardstock. The paper I'm using today is going to be Recollections. It's the 65-pound weight. I'm not going to do it in black, it's hard to see, so I'll do it in the craft color. Alright, gather up your supplies and let's get started. Alright, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to make the binding system of the mini album. So that's the most important thing. Let's get to it. So I've cut a piece of cardstock 7.5 by 11. I'm going to take the long side and put it up against the top of the scoring board. That's how this one works. This is a We Are Memory Keeper scoreboard. It has this fold here, so it does fold, and I tend not to score on either side of this fold line just because it just doesn't stay consistent. So we're going to take the long end, put it flat up against the top of the scoreboard, and start at 1.5 inches. 1.5, and make a line there. I don't know if you can see this, but when I start folding, you'll be able to see it clear. The next one is at 2. The next one, 2.5. Okay, so that's our first set of the hinge. So we're going to do 6 sets of the hinge because we're going to have 6 pages. And then in between the hinges, we're going to have a gusset. And the gusset is going to be 3/8 of an inch wide. So you're going to go a half, half, and 3/8. Half, half, 3/8. So I will list where you score, and once you do it, you'll understand what the pattern is. So the next one is 2 7/8. That's the gusset, and then we're going to go back to the hinge. So we'll do 3 3/8, 4 7/8, 4 1/4, 4 3/4, 5 1/4. The next one is 5 5/8. I'm going to make a mark there, but I'm not going to do it again. It's just because of this We Are Memory Keepers thing, but you go ahead and make a mark at 5 5/8. Next one is 6 1/8, 6 5/8, 7, 7.5, 7 1/8. I'm sorry, 7.5, then 8. Then 8 3/8, 8 7/8, 9 3/8. Okay, I'm gonna go back and do that one that I missed, and that is right here. Alright, so I wanted to show you a little bit further of our binding system. So this is where we just scored. And remember, we sorted it 1.5 inches and did half, half, 3/8, and continue to go on. So you'll see a little bit better here. Half, half, 3/8. So the 1/2 inch is going to be the hinge, and the 3/8 is the gusset. So the hinge is what the page is going to rest on, and the gusset is the space in between the pages in the book. So over here, I've colored the hinges pink And the gusset, it's a light green. You can't really see it, but it is. But once we get going, we're going to add tape to the hinges into the gusset, and then we're going to fold the hinge to make sort of a mountain. All right, so now get out your score tape, and again, you're going to need 3/8 and 1/4 inch score tape, or again, any double-sided adhesive. If you don't have that, instead of using the 3/8, you could just double up 1/4 inch, because I know that is a little more easily available in the stores. And some people also use a liquid glue. I would make sure you use something super duper strong, because this is what the book really is going to rest on. The hinge is pretty important. So I'm going to start with the 1/4 inch score tape, and on every 1/2 inch piece, I'm going to put the score tape close to the top. So here's the mountain. We'll call it a mountain. So the score tape is going to go, let me move this out of the way. Here's the top of it. The score tape is going to go here and here. So it's going to butt up against each other at the top of the mountain. I'll show you what I mean. So here is 1/2 inch, and I'm going to the very top score line, very top. And then I'm going to butt this one up right against it again at that top score line. Now I'll skip the 3/8 inch gusset and I'll go to the next 1/2 inch. So it goes right up at the top. So these two, where the 2 1/2 inches meet, we'll put the 2 1/4 inch tape and they will meet. Now you try to go to the end of it. Now I didn't there, and I went over on those. We'll trim it down, but it's not really critical. I'd say the most critical part of adding the tape end to end is on the underside of the gusset. So again, we're putting it on the 1/2 inch piece at the top where they meet. And one more. I hope you can see this. But there we go. So that's the 1/4 inch tape on my 1/2 inch pieces. And I'm going to take my bone folder. I'm going to do a better job of burnishing in a little while, but I'm just going to put it down now just so it doesn't come up while I'm working the rest of it. Okay, so that's the top of it. Now we're going to turn it over to the underside. And on the underside, we're going to take, so this is the top, here's the underside. So there's the hinge and the gusset. On the underside of the gusset, we're going to tape the 3/8 of an inch tape, which is the same size as the gusset, and go end to end on each gusset. So take my 3/8 of an inch tape. Here is my first gusset. And I'm going to go end to end on the gusset. And to be a little neater here, I am going to use scissors and cut that. So starting at this end, just following the lines, because again it's the 3/8 of an inch gusset and the tape is 3/8, so it should be pretty easy. We'll do it again. So there are 6 hinges and there will be 5 gussets because there's 5 spaces in between the 6 hinges on a book. And then of course you have the outside wings. So let's do one more. Okay. Now I'm going to take the same 3/8 of an inch tape, and on my hinges, I want them, when I put them in the book, to be attached. So you could put tape on the underside on both sides, but you really don't need to. You only really need tape on one side. And you could use 1/2 inch tape. If you have 1/2 inch tape, that's fabulous. But I'm just going to use the 3/8 of an inch tape, and I'm going to put it at the bottom of the hinge, so then it's attached when you go like this. And the top of it is only going to have a little 1/16 of an inch or so showing. So I'm just going to put it, so let me show you what I mean. And this is so the hinges butt up against each other. So I am starting at the bottom, and I am putting it close to the bottom edge, end to end. So here's another hinge. There's the bottom of the hinge. I'm going to take this one and put it right up against where the gusset is. If you watch this all the way through, you'll get a better understanding of why. Once I start folding it, you'll see exactly why I'm putting it here. So I'm just putting 1/3 of an inch piece at the bottom of each set of hinges, because we're going to adhere them together, and this will keep them real close together. You could just pull it and rip it. You could use an X-Acto knife. You could wait till the end and go over and then just cut it all down as far as the excess score tape. It's not that critical. The only thing is you will see what is showing underneath the gusset once you put the pages in. Okay, so now I'm going to do a much better job of burnishing. And burnishing is really important, that it's worth your effort to do right. Some people will use different things. You could use something like this. Now this is something from the old Cricut machine. I think this was when the first version came out. You just want to make sure that the score tape is adhered to the paper. It does two things. Number one, the score again, this is the whole, this is what's going to keep the book together, so you don't want to skimp. And number two, it makes the top easier to peel off if the adhesive is adhered real well. So this is the top, and that's the bottom. Now we still have the wings to do. So you could do one of two things. You could just take, so I'm starting at the line, you could just take some of this 3/8 and add a couple of lines of it. Or if you have any thicker tape, so I have this. This isn't score tape. I really don't even know what brand it is. It was gifted to me. I'm just going to take one piece and put it in there. It's really strong, I'll tell you that. And then put it there. So that's how to finish off the wings. Okay, so now we've got the binding system all taped up, and now we're going to start putting the binding system together. So first thing I'm going to do is, this is the top. This is where the 1/4 inch pieces butt up against each other on the 1/2 inch hinges. I'm going to start by folding these in between each 1/4 inch piece. And then I'm going to take the bone folder and just burnish it, just to make sure that the paper will remember that that's where it's supposed to fold. All right, that's fabulous. All right, now this gets It's not tricky, but it's hard to show, and you just have to do it. So if I pull the paper together, it's going to create a mountain where I've burnished it. But I don't want a whole mountain, you know, I don't want this whole piece. I just want where the two hinges come. So I'm going to put this down and train it to fold at those 1/2 inch pieces just by pulling it up. You just have to do it. And then I'll fold it back and forth and go to the next one. And it's okay if that one doesn't stay there, as long as we're training it where it's supposed to go. We'll go back and make sure that it stays together. So you just go back and forth a couple of times just to train the paper. So you'll have these 6 sets. So you see what I mean? Okay, now that the paper knows which way it wants to go, now we'll make sure it stays the way we want it to. So on the underside, on each 1/2 inch piece, there's that one piece of score tape. We're going to pull that off and push this so that sticks together. You could do it this way if you want. So here is that one 1/2 inch piece. You see there's the tape on one side, the other side is plain. We're going to just push those up together. We'll go ahead and burnish it in a little bit. I just right now want to make sure that our paper gets trained the way we want it to. So what you're going to have at the end is you're just going to have the gusset. Yeah, I have some of this tape. I should have trimmed it a little better. Ultimately, it doesn't matter because we're gonna trim that anyhow. Normally, I'll do this down on the. Normally, I do it like this. Okay, so now we have the hinges sticking up, and you see the gusset in between. And here's a wing. Here's a wing. This is the underside of it. It's just score tape to score tape. Now take your bone folder and we're going to burnish it a couple of different ways. We're going to push this all one way and burnish. Now push it all the other way and burnish again. This is where you could use this one if you want. I've seen some people use a, not a paint scraper, but a spatula kind of thing. Whatever you want to use, just make sure you train the paper a couple of times both ways. Because again, this is the whole binding system of the book. And if you train the paper to go both ways now, then once you put the pages in, then it'll turn easier. So don't skimp on this part to rush to the next. Make sure you get the paper so it's trained both ways. And we'll be doing it one more time. All right, so here we go. Leave it like that, like that. So it's pretty tight there. Once upon a time when I would put it down, I would put glue in here. But I found it was just unnecessary. The score tape keeps it down real well. I think I'm going to trim a little bit of the score tape that's showing over there. This doesn't matter. But I'll trim it a little. Okay, and since we have the scissors out and we're trimming, So again, you've got this hinge and you've got the 1/4 inch piece of score tape on the top. So what I want you to do is take your scissors, let me focus. Sorry. So what I want you to do, focus, and cut at a 45-degree angle right to the end on each of these. Sorry, I'm holding it up in front of me. It's hard to see. Okay? So do the other side as well. It doesn't have to be perfectly 45 degrees. But you're just going to trim down to where the score tape meets the paper on the hinge. Okay. That is fabulous. So there is our hinge. Now I'm going to put this aside, and the next step is to make the cover of the book. Alright, so you're going to need 2 plain pieces of 8.5 by 11 paper. I've changed mats because I want to use a mat with the lines on it. And I'm going to take score tape. At this point I'll use the 3/8 of an inch score tape. And it's going to go down on one of the pieces of paper, right down from end to end, and burnish. Okay, now I'm going to peel this off. See, it doesn't come up that well. You know why? Because I didn't burnish it as well as I should have. If you burnish it, it'll come off like magic. All right, so you can see where I've got the score tape. So I'm going to put this down on some lines. Now, I've seen some people use washi tape and tape it down. You can if you want to. To me, it's not that critical. And then you're going to take the next piece and lining it up with the same line, you're going to adhere it. That's it. Simple. Now I'll burnish it. Okay, and I have my chipboard. I'm going to grab my score tape and I'm going to go around the perimeter of each of these pieces of chipboard with the score tape. Okay, so now we have put score tape around the perimeter of all of our chipboard pieces, and here is our paper that we're going to put it on. So just so you know, it's really important that you put some kind of adhesive in the center of these pieces. Don't rely on just the score tape around the perimeter. And the reason being is if you put this down without anything in the center, it could bubble up, and we don't want it to bubble up. You work really hard on it. Some people do it differently. Some will fill the whole thing with score tape. Some will use sheets of score tape. I don't have sheets, but I have score tape like this, so I could go ahead and do that. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to use my ATG and art glitter glue just to make sure they're down. So I'll show you what I do. So here's the spine. I'm going to go ahead and take off the score tape on the perimeter. And then I'm going to take my ATG, let me move this out of the way, and just fill this in with ATG and So it might be overkill, but I'm going to take my art glitter glue, which I take that larger piece, larger bottle, and fill up these small ones, and I have a tip so it comes out smaller. Now you don't want to go over your tape entirely with wet adhesive, but supplement it. All right, now here's the thing. We see where these two pieces adhere on this side, but on the bottom side, the two pieces adhere, it's more like this. So that is the center line where the two pieces meet. And that's, you want to center this on where those two pieces meet. You can measure it, but I'm just going to eyeball it and put it down. I know it's a little hard to see because the colors are similar, but you can see it. Okay, now this is magical. Take your 1/4 inch score tape and run a piece top to bottom, butt it up against that piece of chipboard. On both sides. Go ahead and burnish it, because this is probably the best opportunity for burnishing you will get. So this does two things. Number one, it gives you a placeholder for putting your next piece of chipboard. And number two, when you put down your binding system, some of it will stick to this and it looks fabulous. All right, so now I'm going to take this other piece of chipboard that is for the cover. Again, this is 8.5 by 5.5. And I'm going to take my ATG and cover it. Well, I'm not going to completely cover it, but I'm going to add more. I don't want any chance of this bubbling up. And while I'm doing that one, I might as well do this one. So I just crisscross. Now I'm going to take some glue and mostly go in between where the, I mean, you could just go like this. It's not going to hurt anything. But you don't want to cover the score tape with art glitter glue. It makes the score tape not work. So I'm going to take this and make sure it's lined up on the bottom, and make sure it's lined up against that 1/4 inch score tape, and put it down, and do the same with this piece. Again, the reason we put so much adhesive is because we don't want the cover to bubble. If it bubbles, you're going to add other stuff to it and you will always know it's there. All right, that's fabulous. Now I'm going to turn this over and burnish. Okay, now I'm going to turn this over and peel off the score tape. It is quite all right that my score tape went over. No big deal. I'm going to peel that off. And then I'm going to cut off the corners of the paper. So I want to make sure I go about 1/8 of an inch away, and you could draw a line and cut on an angle. You don't want to go too close to this because you're going to make sure you cover that when we fold this over. I'm just going to go ahead and cut it. I can eyeball it and make sure it's not going to touch. Always err on the side of taking off too little than taking off too much. Okay, so now we have the paper like this. Now I'm going to add adhesive. So here's the thing. Some people will add score tape to each piece again and to the cover here. I'm using my ATG. Now you do it the way you want to do it. My feeling is once you've covered this, let me show you here. Once you've covered your chipboard, you fold this over. Eventually you're going to put something on top of it. You're going to put designer paper on here, and that is going to make sure this is secure. If the glue didn't secure it, then whatever you put on top is going to secure it. So I sort of save my score tape and use ATG at this point. So I just take ATG and go there and go there. On all four sides, you're going to take ATG and make. So now that we've got the ATG, I'm going to put this on its end and fold, train the paper again to fold the way we want it to fold. So you can see it sort of looks like a bowl shape because that's where I want the paper to fold. All right, and before I go ahead and fold it in, I'm going to take my glue, my wet adhesive, and go a little bit there, and especially get the end here and the end there. And I'm going to pull this towards me, crease it as I go, and starting in the center, make sure that's adhered. And then there we go. So that's adhered. Flatten it out, burnish it. I'll do a better job of burnishing once I get it all done. So again, I'm taking my wet adhesive. Just make sure you use a good strong adhesive when you're putting these books together. So pull it towards me. Use my fingers to make sure there's a crease. I tuck it down in the center, and then the side, and there we go. And then burnish. See this corner here? That needs to be pushed down and tucked in. All right. So you see, I want that pushed down and tucked in. I'm going to take my bone folder and I'm going to pull it towards me and tuck it in. So the same thing with the bottom, I'm going to push it away from me and tuck it in. And if you still have glue on there, then that's going to help tremendously to keep it down. So same here. I'm going to pull it towards me and tuck it in. I'm going to push this one away from me and tuck it in. That's it. I mean, it's not critical, but it does help for a nice crease. So again, I'm going to take my art glitter glue, going to go there, fill in that, and make sure I get it on the sides. Pull this, crease it. Use my bone folder. Now here, so this is sticking out a lot. I'm taking my bone folder and pushing it down. That helps, again, to train it. It flattens it out. The glue that we've got in there gives it a nice crease. So again, take my art glitter glue. and burnish it to make sure it's down. Take my bone folder and push here at the corners, make sure it's adhered, and there is our cover. I think it's fabulous. All right, now let's take our magical binding, and I generally will eyeball it to see where it's going to fit, you know, how much room there is at the top and the bottom, so I have 6 hinges. I want to know where the hinges are going to fall on my spine, how much room I'll have between this hinge and the end of the chipboard, how much room I'll have on the wing into the center of the chipboard. So I just look and see how much room I have before I go ahead and adhere. So I make sure that it looks even on all 4 sides. You could draw a line if you want to, but that line's going to stay there forever because there's no way you'll be able to erase it. I guess you could draw a line here if you wanted to, but I am just going to eyeball it. So I do not take off the adhesive, the double-sided tape on the wings. I just take off what's in the center where the gussets are. And then I will take this, and since I've already eyeballed it and I know how much room there is on each side, then I still hold up the wings. I'm holding up the wings. Let me see if I can show you. You see, I'm still holding up the wings. I'm just letting the center touch, because if I don't like where it is, then I still have time to pull it. And while still holding the wings with my pinky fingers, I'm going to take the ball of my finger, oops, and push this down starting in the center. Then sort of move this hinge a little closer because I want the hinges to be as close to each other as possible. So now I'll move this one and push that down. So I don't like using my bone folder to burnish it now because that will make marks on the gussets. I just use my fingers and push it down real hard. So I've got the 4 center hinges and the 5 gussets pushed down, but I don't have the wings pushed down. So this is what I'm going to do now so now there's adhesive on there, so we're okay with that. So it's down, except for the wings. So this is when I take my bone folder, and my bone folder is almost 1/4 inch thick. And the gusset, I'm sorry, not the gusset, that little indentation where we put the 1/4 inch tape is about 1/4 inch thick. So even while there's still the backing of the paper down, I gently take this and go in that channel and try to bend the paper very gently. You don't want to rip the paper. I probably go over it, well, you see, there's probably 10 times already. I might go over it a little more. Do the same for this one. Oops, that's over here. And also get the bottom here. Gently. Don't push it so much you're going to tear the paper. You will hate yourself for that. I mean, if you tore the paper here, you could always cover it. Nobody but you would know, but you would know. All right, now that I've trained the paper, I'm going to start peeling off some of this. So since I put down a couple of pieces of score tape, I'm going to leave 3 of them on. I'll take that one off, and I'm going to go back and try to train this to go down. And I'm going to pull the cover of the book up off of the table because what I want to do is I want this wing to adhere to the score tape, the 1/4 inch score tape I put next to the spine. I want it to adhere evenly as I pull it up. Now you can go ahead and pull the rest of the score tape up. And again, make sure it's trained, and then I'm taking the butt end of the bone folder and pushing that and making sure that's down, which is fabulous. It's beautiful. All right, let's do the same with this one. So again, we're training the paper to go into that little channel. Now this one only had one piece of double-sided adhesive, so I'm gonna push this one down, use my bone folder, and get that to go in the channel before this goes down and adheres. And then if I need to, I fold this to again train the paper. I'm going to turn my bone folder and use a smaller edge so it goes in there. Be careful you don't get the point in there and rip it. There we go. Now you can see there's a little bit of a gap. So I just take my handy dandy art glitter glue, run it through there. I didn't mean to, but it's no big deal. And push it down. Again, be gentle with this center area. Okay. And now that you've gotten that, now take your bone folder and crease the paper anywhere it meets the chipboard. Just gives it a nice finished look. Makes the book look professional, which of course it is. I'm going to fold this a little more, make sure it's trained. And then what I'm going to do is, since I'm done with this part, I'm going to put some kind of weight on it so it stays folded down while I work on the pages. That was part 1 of the tutorial. Part 2 is going to be making the pages and attaching them to the spine to complete the book. Go ahead and subscribe, and don't forget to hit the thumbs up. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments section. Thanks for watching.